Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
Hello, everybody. Welcome along. Cricket Badger podcast time. End of the Ashes series, 4-1 in the end. Australia winning that final test match in Sydney. There's a horrible little gurning face under a cap at the bottom that's celebrating that. Welcome, Lucas. Welcome, Azeem, back to the pod. And we're going to be picking the bones out of that. Lucas has done a presentation. So we'll do that at the end. You can turn off for that bit. But we're going to get through. Basically, Lucas is going to do why England lost and why Australia won. But we're also going to obviously have a bit of a post-mortem because England were dreadful, made a lot of mistakes as we went through this. Some of us were kind of worried about this series prior to it starting. Some of us, I've seen a lot of people. TMS were full of this. Sky are very kind of like, it's a surprise that England have been beaten. This was a great chance. You know, England, we really thought England would be competitive with this. I mean, I went 4-1 Australia at the start of this, got it right. And to be honest, halfway through the series, I was thinking, well, the one was optimistic. But obviously the fourth test was a little bit more of a lottery on that pitch. But start with you, Azeem. I mean, I know you were at the same camp as me. You were concerned that England weren't quite at the races when it came to the start of this Ashes series. And so it proved.
Yeah, James, listen, for me, all I'm hearing in the aftermath of the series is excuses of why this didn't happen, excuses of why that didn't happen, the things that we saw, and, experts on TNT. I saw some predictions by Sir Alistair Cook, Graham Swan, and I was just like staggered before the series. And all of a sudden after the series, they're spelling out all the mistakes. Now, my question to you and like to everyone out there, and I put it to you, what have we seen over the last 6 weeks that the signs of, or we haven't seen in the last 4 years under this management? And I would say we've seen, whether you go on the bigger detail or the real tiny detail, everything has been there. It's just been masked because, the reality is Test cricket is, because of the resources, England, India, Australia. And it only gets highlighted in them series. And I'm sorry, I've been calling it a cult, and I've been having this back and forth with Matt Floyd on the podcast that we do. And I've gone back as far as 16, 18 months. And there's comments and quotes from myself about how I saw it playing out. And it's exactly how it's played out. But the aftermath is as embarrassing for a lot of people involved in English cricket, media included in that, is because what I'm watching and listening is that there's a lot of talk about, there being no consequences to, no accountability, no consequences culture. While in the same breath, likes of Steve Amerson are saying, I wouldn't change anything. Culture, behaviors, language, it needs to turn into action. You can't in the same breath say, oh, you know what? The lads are going out there playing bad shots and there's no consequences. But you know what? Let's leave it the same. Because actually what you're saying to them is there is no consequences. So, you know what? I'm very, very disappointed, very frustrated because I'm not even near the team and I could see these things. And those around it and near it, how they've not been able to spot them and see them is beyond me. And we really did have an opportunity. If I was in the Australian camp, I would be like, oh my God, we've got away with one here. That's at the same time as giving them the respect and credit for winning it. They found a way. But, if they don't honestly assess themselves and go, you know what, we've got lucky here and we found a way, credit, they're going to find themselves in the same situation in 2 years' time because there's some real flaws within their team. But I don't go that from the notion of, England are great. England have been absolutely horrific and they deserve to lose and they were lucky to win one. But from an Australian point of view, good teams and leaders, they assess and, are highly critical of themselves when they're doing well. And if Australia does that, leaving this series, they're going to be in a good place.
Lucas, what Azeem just said there, a lot of talk at the start of this series, and it actually got worse for Australia because they lost Lyon. Hazelwood was thought to have been able to play a part and then was ruled out fairly early. Pat Cummins played one test. You've got a whole bowling attack there missing from Australia. And with all due respect, the likes of Doggett and stuff that came in weren't as good. They did a good job when they came in. They were good, honest pros basically, but they weren't the kind of the stardust that Hazelwood or Cummins might have done. So there was a thought within England that I think that they thought, well, this is a great opportunity. This is a weak Australia. This is Bazball. We're going to basically win this. Is there any kind of sense in Australia that a kind of, I mean, the B team's unfair, but a kind of lesser team has kind of got away with one or has done really well to still win?
Not really. And by the way, just like you, James, I said 4-1 Australia. But Azeem's right, and it's not all rainbows and unicorns. There is problems in the Australian batting depths, number 3 in opening position and an all-rounding position. So there are holes, but the perception in Australia was just get the Ashes done no matter what. If it's 3-2, 1-0 even, or hell, even 0-0, just retain the Ashes was your number one goal. And I thought that the bowlers that we played, they're basically Sheffield Shield bowlers. Boland's a bit harsh because I think now they'll pick Boland over Hazelwood even if Hazelwood's fully fit. But Neser, Doggett, Jai Richardson, they're all Sheffield Shield bowlers. Brendan Doggett was the leading wicket taker last year in the Sheffield Shield for South Australia. Helped them win a title in 30 years. I went to that final myself. So these are the best of the Shield. For me, Neser was really surprising. He took 15 wickets, Neser. Now, if you go back and look at Neser's last Sheffield Shield game in December before the Ashes started, November, he represents Queensland. He played WA in WA in the WACA. WA had to chase 210, 220. That's very tough. Neser was horrible in that game. He went for something like none for 60, and WA won by 1 wicket. So he wasn't even in great form. And there was people like myself, James, saying, well, where's O'Neill? Why isn't O'Neill playing? O'Neill's been the form bowler. But Michael Neser was absolutely fantastic this series and a little bit with the bat as well. So those things really do surprise you form-wise. But like I said, the perception of the media was just get the Ashes done. Whatever it takes, do what you have to do. They produced green top pitches. You're right, James. That fourth test was a lottery. That could have easily been 5-0. But majority of them were green top pitches. They were seam-friendly pitches. And Australia, I think, have the better bowlers. They bat better on those pitches, even though there are problems there. And as we've mentioned it throughout this whole show, James, that England just didn't want to survive that storm, that onslaught by Stark or by Boland. Or by Neser when it was moving compared to Australian batters. Look at Travis Head. How can it be? No disrespect to Travis Head, he's an absolute world-class player. But how can he open a whole series, literally a whole series, and look better, have a better technique than Duckett, have a better technique than Crawley, have a better technique than Pope? No, that is just also ridiculous. So how can that be? And for me, this was dominant. This was extremely dominant. There was probably only 1 point in the series where England had Australia in trouble. That was at the Gabba, the first test, when they bowled out Australia very cheaply. But after that, I think it was complete dominance by Australia. They won that MCG test by lottery, but this was complete annihilation, in my opinion.
I think the Michael Neser, he played brilliantly, and it's quite nice to see somebody towards the end of their career, because he's cracking on a little bit, but he's had a series. He can always say he's an Ashes winner now, and I thought he played really well. And he can bat too, can't he? There's some useful runs on the way as well. But I thought he's a good example of England's lack of thought or lack of game management, because when you watch him bowl, he when the ball's moving around, he is a massive threat. When the ball's got a little bit older, he looks a different bowler. When it's gun barrel straight, there's nothing there from him. He's slower and he can pick him off. England never actually thought that. The kind of engaging brain, let's get through this eight overs of Michael Neser, and he's going to be a lesser threat when he comes back later. No, we'll crack on and we'll try and take him down now. And that's, Azeem, a little bit of England's problem, I think, through this, is the lack of clarity of thought at times, of when to actually attack and when to actually dig in. And there's I keep going back to the that partnership in the first test between Labuschagne and Smith, which basically saw off half an hour of England looking a real threat with the ball, and then they're able to get runs later on. England don't have that clarity of thought. There's always a stupid shot around the corner. Harry Brook, I mean, I've been pulling my hair out with Harry Brook. Harry Brook is undoubtedly a fantastic player. He's got huge potential. The ceiling for somebody like Harry Brook is massive, probably even higher than Ruti, because he has got the attacking game, he's got the defensive game, but he just seems to basically be 2 seconds away from calamity all the way through. You can't watch him with any sense of security because you know there's a stupid little shot that he's going to play and he's going to get himself out. He needs to be hungry for runs. He needs to knuckle down and really fight for 180 rather than a nice 46. But that's England in a nutshell. It's kind of like fast food cricket rather than actually trying to have a gourmet dinner and doing it properly.
Yeah, I think as well, Australia, I think, are probably not getting enough credit for, and their coaching staff and their captain, of the plans they put in place and the detail to the plans. And I think that's the difference between the two teams. If we're looking just in this series, is Australia were professional, they had attention to detail, they had a plan, and they executed it. My simple philosophy.
Just on that, Azeem, England's had two plans. They had Plan A, which was basically top of off stump, which they didn't execute, because I mean, Lucas mentioned Travis Head there. Two things with Travis Head: he's a good puller, and he cuts the ball for fun. And basically, Cast was bowling like long hops outside of his off stump that were carted away. I mean, where's the thought there? But England went from that Plan A to basically everybody back on the deep square boundary with short bowling. There was nothing in between. When Ben Stokes first came in as captain, he was known for his kind of funky feels and trying things and doing other things, pulling, even if it was just getting in the batter's head, putting a fielder there because it was going to basically just unsettle the batsman's thought process. Why does he put a fielder at short cover? That kind of stuff. But there was nothing in between with Ben Stokes. It was either Plan A, which failed most of the time, or Plan B, sticking everybody back. Yeah,
and you go to Harry Brook, and that's my point. You go to, you could go through the batting lineup, and if you could go individually, there seems to be, whenever you're watching them, you're like, right. A good example would be Will Jacks in the final bit. You could see that England had got a bit of a partnership. England were 30 ahead, and you could see, there was no reason for Will Jacks to be promoted above Jamie Smith. Now, I'm putting two and two together. It's clear in the dressing room, someone's gone, oh my God, this is now, we're going to attack it. We're going to have great 20 overs. We're going to run towards danger, and we're going to get a lead, and then we're going to bowl them out. As opposed to going, hold on a minute, we're in a good position now. Let's try and get through the end of the day. We'll have a good hour tomorrow at the start. We put Australia in a position where they can't win it, and then for 2 sessions, we try and bowl them out, right? So that would have been a simple game. How games played, but these guys had a different idea. I go to, the game, the last match against India at the Oval. That evening to the morning, it was so clear the way them batters came out that all the conversation, all the chat, all the language would have been, right, we take it to them. We take it to them. Let's take it to them. Let's go at them. And then that's how the lads come out and play. Now, listen, the players have got to take responsibility at some point. So I think a lot of the players, they're young lads, fine, but at some point they needed to go, you know what, hold on a minute. This is not right. They needed their, the leaders, someone to be able to go, well, this is not right. But they've all just got carried away down this sort of vibes and this delusional world that they're living in. And they've got away with it against most teams. That India team in the summer, by the way, India should have won. Secondly, that India team were very weak, as we've seen subsequently. Again, they've lost test series at home, and we drew 2-2. The problem is, right, with this England team, and you're talking about the final actions of them decisions under pressure. They play a lot of no consequence cricket. They can get away with a lot. In England, as a fielder in the slip, if you drop a catch, it's not amplified because you'll probably get another one in 3-4 overs time, or, in half an hour's time. In places like Australia, India, a chance goes you don't get another one for 3 hours, right? And that's what under pressure means. And then, they went into Australia knowing full well the scrutiny they'll be under. Sorry, I couldn't get my words out from everything. But yeah, they've gone in there.
About 2 extra syllables to that word then.
They've gone in there with this blasé attitude. But I'm a big believer in your attitude and your actions are led from your leaders, and you are a reflection of your captain and coach's personality. And I think that's what we've seen. And this is why I've been calling a cult for a very long time, because you dare go on Twitter, you go dare anywhere and criticize this team for the last 4 years, and you're a dinosaur, or you're the problem, or you're negative. Even now, it's like, hold on a minute. Are we watching the same thing? How possibly again, I'm going to criticize some of this media because they've been part of this cult, right? How can you, in the same sentence, slag off Brendan McCullum, but say that Rob Key should be fine or Ben Stokes should be fine? We've got to just step back, assess where we've got to, and if we really want to not end up in the same situation in 4 years' time, because I can tell you a script of what would happen if we're going to keep the same people. We'll be fine against the New Zealand. We'll be fine against the Pakistan. We'll be fine. Oh, you know what? We've sorted it out. We've improved, blah, 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 blah. All of that, right? And we'll come up against India and Australia again, and we'll end up in the same situation. And it's not just about the preparation. What does Jeetan Patel actually do? I would love to know what he's actually done, because if you talk about no consequences, well, there hasn't been a spinner that's improved under him. And I'd go as far as to say everyone else has gone back. Everyone's gone backwards while being in charge under him, right? Whether it's batting coach, fitness, right? How many injuries have we had in this series? You're telling me you've prepared for 3 years for this, right? How many injuries? Where's the SNC staff? Where are the physios? Where are all this? Because culture, behavior, under pressure, these are not like things that just happen out of luck. There's a lot of little things that takes place for it to get there. And I think this team, firstly, have no idea of reality. And actually, at times when you listen to them, they're completely lost on understanding the game. I've got to say, some of the interviews, you listen to them and you go, like Ben Stokes did an interview where he said, me and Brendan know how to get the best out of a dressing room. And I'm listening to that at the end of the series, and I'm listening to that and I'm going, hold on a minute. Seriously? Because that's not what I've just seen. So the world that they live in and what the actual reality is a long way apart. And until that's met somewhere in the middle, we're going to be a long way off. Just before you bring Lucas in, I'd go a bit further. The problem you have right now is personnel-wise, you've got a lot of lads on 2-year central contracts or even a year central contracts. That was only given a few weeks ago. So just like, and this is about learning from it, just like Rob Key did before the World Cup in India, he gave out central contracts. People went there. They had to change the whole personnel. Johnny Bairstow never played again. David Malan didn't play again, had central contracts. This has happened again. Even Brendan McCullum, dare I say it, if he hadn't had the extension that he's just had before, he'd already be sacked. But because of that payout, that is a thing that needs to be signed off, there's a bit more conversations. Who signed that off? The CEO? Why is he not being questioned? Because I remember when Tom Harrison was the CEO of the ECB, the press pack, your colleagues, absolutely hated him. So they went for him. They absolutely went for him, right? But all of a sudden, because Richard and Richard have got such nice little cushy relationships with these guys, no one's calling them out. And one of the biggest things as a leader is getting the best out of your resources. For what it's worth, Brendan McCullum would be an outstanding assistant coach. He would be a great assistant coach, but he's not a head coach. It's very clear. He's too cozy. He's too emotionally attached. That's without going on to some of the off-field stuff, which I don't want to get into right now. I think as a cricket fan, as an ex-player, as someone that understands the game, I am incredibly frustrated as to the blinkered way how England have gone into this series, and listening to some of the aftermath and knowing some of the leaders and how they make their decisions. I honestly think that we're going to continue in the same path because they're more bothered about what it looks like as opposed to actually changing things.
Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Gaurav as well. We're basically broadcasting on both the Cricket Badger and the Gaurav podcast channels. So like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at cricket_badger. Azeem's got his Twitter handle underneath his name there as well, so follow him. I just go on from what you've just said there. For me, all three, Rob Key, Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes, carry equal fault for this. For me, I don't think you can separate them out because they're They've worked as a triangle, a triumvirate, whatever the phrase would be. Rob Key's been the kind of the cheerleader from the top, appointing the people to execute the plan. Saw Brendan McCullum to be the kind of carefree, vibes kind of character that would be good for that dressing room. Ben Stokes is obviously, I mean, a lot of talk about whether it should be called Bazball or Benball, because I think a lot of Bazball has been Ben Stokes. It's his character, it's his personality to be up and at him and to be on the front foot. So all three of them have got equal stakes in what this team has offered. And when you go back to prior to COVID and you look at England's results, England have always been strong at home, weak away. This team is providing results that are inferior, if anything, but certainly no better than the team prior to COVID. A lot of people hark back to the one win in 17 matches, but that was in COVID. That was when they were going to Australia, living in isolation in hotel rooms, not being able to eat together, drink together, do anything together. And it was a completely artificial environment where England played more Test matches in that period to save Test cricket. That was when they were saving Test cricket, not now. That was when they were saving Test cricket, when they were actually touring and doing all of this stuff. So you can't that Joe Root team. Joe Root's captaincy is tarnished by that, but there should always be an asterisk next to that period, because England were doing the hard yards that nobody else was doing to play Test cricket. So this team have provided us with exceptional days. Don't get me wrong. There have been times where this Bazball kind of approach has led to some really exciting cricket, and they've taken some wins. They've turned some draws into wins, and there have been some great days. There have also been some absolutely bloody awful days when they've fallen apart and they've had a winning position and lost six wickets for 60 runs and turned a fantastic position into a position of weakness. So, and there've probably been more days like that than there have been good days. But people remember the good days and forget all of these disappointments and the collapses. So England need to have a really long, hard look at this. You look at how Ben Stokes has talked since the series is finished, or since the 3-0 really. You look at how Brendan McCullum's kind of fronted up to it. They're both kind of admitting some kind of mistakes, but both saying that they are the right people to take this forward. Well, they would do, wouldn't they? Because all three of them, Key, Stokes, and McCullum, want to stay in jobs. I get the feeling with Brendan McCullum, there's a lot of talk about England need to change the dynamic a little bit and change some of the processes of what they're doing. Jonathan Agnew, I thought, spoke very well on TMS about, you look at Australia ahead of the day's play. They're going through all of these drills. They're doing things kind of properly, in inverted commas. England are just rocking up and playing football. There are differences between the approach of both teams, and the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? 4-1. So England have got to do certain things differently. Now, it's been put to McCullum, are you prepared to do things differently? And he's kind of said, well, I have got principles and I've got ways of things I believe in. So he's kind of almost like daring the ECB to sack him a little bit in some ways, because he knows he's going to get a big payoff. And if he leaves England, he'll go into an IPL gig, he'll go into something else. He's not going to be short of offers. So, because Bazball's kind of made his name a little bit. So that you kind of see all of these kind of things. Yeah. I agree with you. You got people in the media backing friends and kind of like saying, well, you got to protect him, but he can go. For me, Azeem, I'd get rid of all three of them.
I've been very, very clear. This is a cult, right? Before you make any decision as to what future looks like, you need to assess where you're at. And again, it's something I've been saying for 14 months. When this goes wrong, you won't know where to pick it up. And the reason you won't know where to pick it up is because your chat is being so extreme, whether that's on an individual player level or whether outwardly. One of the biggest mistakes of these guys has been that they've put their colours to the mast so strongly at times that they've never been able to backtrack from it, because in their mind it makes them look like they're wrong. And actually, as personalities, if you look at as personalities, they don't like to, even right now when everyone is telling them, and there's been a little bit of, oh yeah, I might have got it. I've been looking for a reaction to see where I think, do they actually believe they've got it wrong? And I actually don't think genuinely deep down either Ben, Brendan or Rob actually genuinely believe that they've got it wrong. I don't think they do. And that's my point of they can't continue. Asking someone to change their personality, someone as strong-willed as Brendan McCullum, I mean, the fact that that's been suggested, and it's been suggested by a lot bigger names than us, James, I find quite naive. And I actually, I'll give you an example. Actually, when I was the under-19 captain, I was the under-19 captain for a period of time, and going into the World Cup, the manager came up to me and said, we still think you're the best person for the job. We just need you to just be a little bit more like this. And the coach came up to me and said, do not listen to him. If he wants a different personality to be captain, he needs to go pick that personality, because the reason you were picked as captain is because of your personality. But if we make you the captain and then ask you to change your personality, then we're not going to get the best out of you. And that stuck with me. And I think in life, if you're picking the leader, you decide what type of leader you want, because there's no one way to do things. But then you go and pick that best person that fits what you want. To get Brendan McCullum, and I've seen suggestions, get someone in that's going to challenge him, get someone in that's going to try and do this to him, that to him. The reality is, if Brendan McCullum doesn't have people that he trusts around him, if Brendan McCullum doesn't have say in what goes on, the final say, then Brendan McCullum should not be in the job. And if the fact that you're even suggesting that tells me that you don't think that he's the best person for the job. So there's a lot that's being talked about. I'm of the belief that for you to actually try and, by the way, it's going to be an absolute nightmare to undo some of the damage that's been done. Let me put this for me, undoing is not just winning against New Zealand. Undoing it is not just, a little bit of a few wins against, because I don't make my judgments on the results, on what I see. It's going to take a bit of time, because actually, the reality is with these central contracts, and these lads are some of the best players in the country. The messaging that they've been grown up on, they're going to find a nightmare to suddenly change overnight. So I am very, very clear. And the notion that Ben Stokes is he's the best person for the job, there's no one else, blah, 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 all of this. I'm sorry. The first person to blink under pressure was Ben Stokes. He called his men weak. He was the first person.
His captaincy, Azeem, I think, has been really poor in this Ashes series. I think all of those funky things he was doing at the start have disappeared. And he's gone within himself, and he looks like he's fearful of losing. Well,
actually, I'd say his captaincy, again, I've got clips of podcasts that I've done months and months ago. His captaincy has been poor throughout. all them funky things that you're talking about, they work in Pakistan against Pakistan on a flat deck because Pakistan are poor, right? They don't work in under pressure, in consequence cricket, in real time, because you can't just do it and get away with it, right? And actually, Test cricket or cricket, long format cricket, is very, very simple, and it's complicated for no reason.
I think with Ben Stokes, I think of his three attributes, if you forget fielding, captaincy, I thought he failed. Batting, he failed. I thought he was poor with the bat in this series. With the ball, he was good. At times, he was really good with the ball. But we all know with Ben Stokes, he's held together by sticky tape. We saw in the final test, he limped off. Because ultimately, his body, he's as strong as an ox and he doesn't show any pain, but his body lets him down at times. I think now is the right time to say to Ben, thanks ever so much for everything you've done for the Test team. Go and play one-day cricket. Go and fill your boots for the last couple of years of your career, and let's move on. Let's find another captain. Let's change.
Well, actually, I've been very clear. England's success in the last decade is all around Ben Stokes, a cricketer. You look at the 2019 World Cup, you look at any success England's, the T20 World Cup, Ben Stokes, a cricketer, is what's made England in the last decade tick. I personally don't think that he needs to leave it, but I don't think he can captain. I honestly do not, because actually for himself, what I see is someone that is obsessive about the leadership role. I see someone that's actually, for all the right intention, is actually not helping his players grow. Although he will feel he is too much in their faces. He's setting the fields. He's too much in the bowler's space. He's not letting them grow. And again, when I go to leadership, for me, it's as much about what you do, but as opposed to as much as how many leaders you create. Owen Morgan's a great example. I thought he was an outstanding leader. Within Owen Morgan's team, there was about 6 or 7 people that could have captained that team.
Yeah.
And in Ben Stokes' team, there is not one single person that stands out. And actually, as well, and I wish, again, this is something we can go back and I can push it out there. I have felt for a while that someone has needed to go to Ben, you concentrate on the batting and bowling, and we'll take a little bit off you. Ben, and that should have been Joe Root for what it's worth. That should have been Brendan McCullum. That should have been some of the assistant coaches, and that should have been Rob Key. But Ben is such a figure that, you know, everyone is too scared to say anything to Ben. And also, media's too scared to criticize him. So some of Ben's press conferences over the last few years, you know, they've been rude. You know, they've been patronizing to the press. They've not been great, but no one's called it out. And Ben's got into this place where he's forgotten the fact that his batting and bowling matters more than his captaincy. If Ben was, you know, if someone had have supported him and he'd have taken a bit more of a backward step, he wouldn't have got injured, because actually the mental energy goes onto your physical energy as well. I'm very clear. Brendan, Ben, absolutely. And I'm absolutely shocked. I'll be honest with you, how Steve Harmison in particular, and I know he's a friend of his, how with any, you know, straight looking at anyone in the face, how he can say in the same conversation say, Brendan McCullum has brainwashed everyone. Brendan McCullum is the problem. Everything lies at Brendan McCullum's feet. But we should listen to Rob Key. And hold on a minute. And by the way, disclaimer, I was one of the people who, at the time when the job was available, thought someone like a Rob Key would be brilliant. And you can start, you know, I can stand here and say, and he's been a disaster. And this is my point of where do you start? That multi-year contracts, just before the 50 over World Cup in India, you go back there, that's where the decline has started. He's taken over a white ball team, and, you know, they're in absolute shambles. And the red ball team, it's built up. We've been told how this was going to be the thing that we're building up to. And everyone else that tells them that you're getting it wrong, it's not right, what you're doing is not right, they've practically basically said, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, you want to strip back, have a look at how people have been appointed under Rob Key, what people have got jobs. People have been brought from all here, there, everywhere. You've got Graham Swan on TNT. No wonder he loves it, because he's been given a job, right? All the ex-players have been brought in. And listen, for players, for as good as they can bat and bowl, some of these players are not coaches. You've got to realize what coaching is. I think it's time we cut with this experiment. It's time we work out that, you know what, media is what's natural to these guys. Let them do media. It's time we realize that coaching is more than just having batted and bowled and got, you know, test runs and wickets, right? And actually understand that, you know, these players need to realize that these guys are there to do a job for their country, right? And they get paid to do that. And they're not on a jolly and these interviews, or, you know, I'm living every 10-year-old's dream. Yeah, I get that. But that's not why I put you in front of the camera. And this is my real concern moving forward, is because you've got podcasts galore left, right, center, yeah, and all of them, you know, I'm listening to them. I feel for them. I cringe for them. These people, I honestly cringe for them, because how can you, with a straight face, sit there and go, oh well, you know what, I predicted England to win 3-1, but I saw all this coming. Well, actually, all this has been happening in front of you, and you don't have the balls to actually say anything, because you know you're not going to get the access, like me and you don't, because if you stand up for something in English cricket, well, actually, you're the problem.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with people like Harmy, I mean, Harmy went for a coaching role, didn't he, under Rob Key right at the start? And he basically probably sees himself, if there's a clear out, he's got a job, because his mate will still be there if he backs Rob Key. So we see it in all kinds of different things. We saw it in your situation, and going back to the Azeem Rafiq scandal, and people backing mates all the way through that, and the same is happening with Brendan McCullum and Rob Key and Ben Stokes now. So nothing changes. Nothing changes in cricket. Who would be surprised? Anyway, should we move on to Lucas's presentation? Because Lucas
let's see it, Lucas.
It's 3:30 in the morning where Lucas is, and bless him, I can see him being tired at the bottom there while me and Azeem were talking. So we'll bring him back in. He's provided me with this, which I'll put onto the screen. It came on, it came off again. There we go. It should be coming back. Lucas is, he hasn't written this, because I've had to change his spelling and a few things on it. But do you want to talk us through, Lucas, why you think Australia won and England lost? This is Lucas's.
Yeah, we'll start. Yeah, thank you, James. And that is a nice looking photo there. Thank you for that. So we'll start with England. Shot selection at critical times was pathetic, to be honest. Especially in Brisbane, when they had Australia on the ropes. Like I said earlier, that was probably the only time when they did have them in trouble. Threw it away. Brooke, Root at times are very poor. I know Root finally got his 100 and then got another 100, but in between he was really poor. Same with Book. Ducker I was extremely disappointed with, to be honest. Another one that just threw his wicket away. The lack of rotation of bowlers. England knew that you bought bowlers that weren't going to be fit to play 5 tests or even 4 tests. Mark Wood went down in the first test. Then Jofra Archer went down, and then Atkinson, and in the end Stokes went down. You have bowlers at your disposal. You have Jamie Overton. His stats are very good at county level. He's been playing in the Big Bash for the Adelaide Strikers. So he's had miles in his legs. Anderson should have came down as a consultant, and what they should have really done with Anderson leading up to that pink ball test, which incidentally he's got his best figures in Australia. What are the odds on that? They should have said, you know what, Anderson, Jimmy, why don't you just have a bowl in the net, see what we do, and they should have played him. Robertson's a different one. How in the world is Robertson?
I'm going to come in there because there's no way they're going to pick Jimmy Anderson. Jimmy Anderson's gone, Lucas. We need to forget Jimmy Anderson.
Well, he didn't go out on his own terms, though, to be honest. He got shoved. He got pushed out by McCullum.
It's very much
we have to make that clear. With Ollie Robinson, I'm not upset.
Hold on, Lucas. Sorry, Lucas. I know we've spoken a lot and it's late at night. Can I jump in on the Jimmy Anderson thing, by the way? Because I think that typifies this management, right? If you have decided that you don't want Jimmy Anderson, fine, right? That's your prerogative. It's your decision. You go and tell him that, whatever. Jimmy's not going to be happy, right? And Jimmy has a presence. And Jimmy's in the media, right? So you've got these 3 things. Also, I'm pretty sure the chairman of the ECB company might even represent Jimmy, but check that out. You've got this situation now. If that's what you want, why have you got him as a bowling coach for the rest of the summer, just so he doesn't go out and criticize you? Because you know what you're going to see now, and I've already seen one clip, is now Jimmy Anderson's going to speak. So my point going back to is if you've got the courage to make a decision, then make a decision. Don't try and, what will it look like? Or we'll give it, because, a bowling coach role is quite an important role in a team. And it's one of the reasons that's been picked up now as to why these bowlers were bowling short and wide, to Travis said, and why they couldn't hit the stump, or why at 1 minute they were, for about 3 balls trying to hit top of off and then just bowling bumpers because they didn't have a bowling coach. Anyway, I'll let you carry on with your presentation. I think it just goes back to they don't really understand what they're doing. And they make every decision from the lens of what does it look like as opposed to what is right.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct, Azeem. I completely agree with that. Robertson, for me, this is not about him playing. How in the world did the ECB let a current player, he hasn't retired, bowl in a net with Steve Smith, Sam Constance in it? Now, Sam Constance didn't play. He was considered to be an opener earlier, but how does that happen? How does the ECB let that happen? That's like Yorkshire. Joe Root's playing for Yorkshire, and they said, "Hey, Scott Boland, come over and bowl to Joe Root." That's just ridiculous. Absolutely nonsense. Attitude when it isn't going your way. I mentioned this before the series of James Buttler, Ben Stokes. We saw Ben Stokes in India. Clap his hand. Come with me. I saw nothing of that. I saw something in the Sydney Test match which caught my eye. When Ben Stokes went off injured, they were very flat. If you looked at the scoreboard when he came off, it looked like Australia was in front by 500 runs, when really they were behind by 150. Brooke took over the captaincy, and I was paying close attention to it. And England all of a sudden were laughing, they were clapping, they were engaging. So you can make that how you will with that one.
Just coming on Ben Stokes, I mean, we talked about him. I did for Knighton already, but I remember watching Joe Root in the Caribbean when at the end of his Test captaincy run, and he looked like a shadow of his former self. He looked a bit gaunt. He looked like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders, and it was making him unwell. And I think he admitted later he went home, and a few family and friends said to him, Ruti, this isn't doing you any good, and he stepped aside. I saw a little bit of that in Ben Stokes, to be honest, in the 4th and 5th Test, when he knew that the dream was dead, and it was not possible to take the urn back after investing so much of himself in it. Particularly in the 5th Test, the camera kept going to him, and he looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. There's a time, I think, where even if it's just purely from a mental health side of things, but there's a time where the captaincy is important, but it's not at the cost of somebody's well-being. And I wonder if Ben Stokes is maybe taking it as far as he can. But anyway, back to you, Lucas.
No, I agree with that heavily, James. Harry Brook took over captaincy in that Sydney Test, and England, attitude changed. Now, the reasons why Australia won this Test match: rotation of bowlers. We just mentioned that. Only 2 bowlers played all 5 Tests, which was Mitchell Starc and Scott Boland. Contribution from the 80 to 85 miles bowlers that Rob Key doesn't like. He said that those bowlers do not work with keepers coming up to the stumps. Well, let's look at the next one. Boland 20 wickets, Nisa 15 wickets. That's 35 wickets between them, Rob Key. So obviously it does work, and Alex Carey was keeping up to the majority of the time. So there goes that theory. Starc 31 wickets, absolutely brilliant by Mitchell Starc. For me, I think he's gone past Pat Cummins. I think he's probably on current form the best bowler. And Bumrah doesn't really play 5 Test matches. He takes rests for some reason. But Starc, what makes Starc also so good, James and Azeem? He hardly gets injured. His longevity has been incredible for a bowler that consistently bowls 45 k's per hour, 90 miles per hour. He doesn't get injured. I don't remember him getting injured even once. Yes, Azeem.
Can I just jump in on Starc?
Before you
just
do that,
1 second.
You played with Starc, didn't you? When you were with him here, and he was a good lad there. I enjoyed having him for that season.
And you know what? That's what I was going to jump in with. He was a good lad, but actually, and at that time he'd just broken into the white ball team of Australia, and there was still a lot of Willie, where there was there was a bit of inconsistency, etc., etc. But his professionalism. When we're comparing professionalism, and this is what I talk about, you try and judge not just on the final outcome as to what's happening as a process that's taking place to get there. The little details. He had a plan that was set out for him from Cricket Australia, and he's someone that's just broken in. But the finer details of that plan and how meticulously, whether that's in the gym, the way he trained, just everything was just so on point. And when you compare that to what we've heard about the England team, and I just million miles apart. And when they talk about what it takes to be world class, I saw that with him back then. And so I remember at the time going, my word, this is such small, little things, but he was so meticulous with it. And actually, you're seeing it now. I mean, it's incredible that he's got through 5 Test matches, but he was bowling 145 at the first ball at the start and 145 right at the end. And I think it was just incredible and real role model for Australian cricket. And I think they'll miss him hugely whenever the time comes. Yeah. But you look at the period of how he's got here. He's prioritised red ball cricket. He's prioritised Australia over IPL contracts. Australian players get paid well, so do the English players. But you offer an English player, something in the IPL and drop everything to go for it. And you look at, even I'd go as far, you look at the build-up of IPL within this build-up to the Ashes, and you look at the Australian players and you look at the English players. We've got completely two different. We've actually been dictated. That initial central contract thing I keep going to, that was because suddenly all players were going to sign multi-year contracts with franchises. Listen, Mitchell Starc, I watched that close up, and it's absolutely no surprise to me that he's been able to stay fit and firing for so long.
Yeah, but before, can you put me back on the screen, James? I want to tell Azeem this. If you can remember when Starc first was in the Test team, he was bowling 150.
Whoa. Who directs this show, Lucas?
That's my segment. I thought.
More than happy to have your face on the screen, but I am in charge of who's on the screen and who isn't.
Oh, so next time I'll say please. But on Mitchell Starc, if you can remember when he came to the Test team, he played 10, 15 Test matches. There was a series against New Zealand where he was bowling 155, 160, but his accuracy was all over the place. Now he worked a lot with our bowling coach Craig McDermott at the time. Dropped his pace a little bit, but his accuracy went through the roof. Especially his out way swingers with the wobble seam that he bowls. So when he first came in, there was a lot of heat on Mitchell Starc, and I said this with James Buttler before this series. Do the Australian crowd actually appreciate him? And I said they do, but they prefer, like when you talk about fast bowlers in Australia, you think about Jeff Thompson, Brett Lee, Dennis Lilly. But I think this series now, James, finally, it's taken about 20 years. Finally, they actually appreciate what he has done. It's a shame it's taken that bloody long, but no, they now finally appreciate what Mitchell Starc's about. And he's a legend of cricket Australia by, alongside with Dennis Lilly, Jeff Thompson, Brett Lee, Mitchell Johnson. He's better than them. So it's taking a long time, but they finally got there, James. They finally do respect him.
I think there's two things. One, I don't know if you remember that, but early on in his career, actually, the late Shane Warne was pretty brutal in his criticism of Mitchell Starc. And if I remember it right, he called it out a couple of times, and he even his partner might have called it out. And I remember it at the time. And it's because he is so. He's such a lovely bloke, which makes a change for an Australian fast bowler. And within this group, Pat Cummins, Josh Hazlewood, played against them, had opportunity because of the Champions League, because of Starkey, to spend a bit of time. They're a top bunch of lads. They're good lads, and even I think when he went past Wasim Akram's thing, I listened to the interview and he goes, yeah, he's a real go. I'm just doing my. So he's been quite un-Australian like talking about himself. And I think within your culture a little bit, you like the guy who's going to pump his chest out and, is going to look at me, I'm brilliant. And I think a little bit it's been that, but I don't think he minds. I think he's happy. And if you look at all the success, I talk about Ben Stokes, the cricketer. If you look at the success you had, he's been a focal part of it, whether it's white ball cricket, and now finally the recognition he was the man of the series for Australia in the last Ashes in England as well. So the performances has been there. I think for a long time, the Australian public have not quite warmed to him in the same way they have to some of their heroes in the past, because he's actually a different character.
I think, and now with Mitchell Starc, he was with the Sydney Sixers, wasn't he, when we were in the Champions League?
Yeah.
He went out of his way one day. Me and Graham Hardcastle, the journalist, were over in South Africa covering Yorkshire's kind of progress through that tournament. And we wanted to have a chat with Mitchell Starc. We got in touch with him, and one day when he was between training and something else, he went out of his way to meet up with us so he could give us a little interview. And I thought, he was a really lovely guy. That was back in 2012, so that's a long time ago. He's had his entire career since then, but that was testament to him. And to be honest with you, working in cricket, you grow up in England thinking Australia the enemy, England, go rah rah rah. But in my experience of meeting cricketers, I've met a lot more England cricketers that I disliked than Australian cricketers. Put it that way. The Australians are actually, although they fight hard on the pitch, they're good lads off it, which is testament to them. Do you want to finish off your slides?
Yeah, I'll run through it. So we mentioned, bowling 20 wickets, needs to 15, 30 wickets between them. Apparently Rob Keane doesn't rate those kind of bowlers. Travis Head as an opener, 600 plus runs. That stat's mind-boggling for me. I can't believe that. If you said to me Travis Head's going to be an opener and then score 600 runs, I would never believe you. And the last one was Steve Smith's captaincy and attitude. We talked about Ben Stokes' captaincy and attitude. Steve Smith out-captained Ben Stokes in all those test matches that he played in. Except for the one in Adelaide where Cummins took over. And there's now once again of talk, should Steve Smith stay as captain, should Cummins stay? I'm getting sick of it, to be honest. But again, Steve Smith's captaincy and his field placings were absolutely brilliant once again. And his record as captain is extraordinary.
He is, alongside Marnus Labuschagne, though, two of the most annoying people, human beings on this planet, aren't they? I mean, the way when he was batting and he signalled the wide to the umpire and all of his little mannerisms, and I think Steve Smith's wife must be working for charity or something, because to live with him and experience that 24/7 must be horrendous.
Listen, I love it. I love it. Both of them. It's brilliant viewing. Brilliant viewing.
There was a story on the local feed, which I know you don't get. There's a story that sometimes when his partner comes over touring like England or South Africa or whatnot, sometimes he doesn't even sleep, and she has a restless night as well. No, he gets very nervous at times. With Marnus, I can tell you one thing with Marnus, James. Who did he get out to? Jamie Smith. Every time he sees Jamie Smith, I can absolutely guarantee you he will let him know about that dismissal. He will not shut up about that. In the Sheffield Shield, he actually opens with the new ball, Azeem. Can you believe that? He actually opens with the new ball. His technique is actually not too bad. If he started as a 20-year-old and you turned up like that, there is a lot. I'm a bowling coach. I did take a lot of wickets in my career. That's all right, but there is a lot he can work with. He's got good rhythm and good run up. He's a good leggy as well.
Yeah. He's a good leggy as well. I've watched him opening. Yeah. I've watched him take the new ball in the club cricket as well on some of the clips. I love him. I think
he bowls off spin leg. I've seen him bowl leg spin one ball and off spin the other, the medium pace in the last ball, the over. It just absolutely. Well, he's the captain of Queensland. I guess he can do whatever the hell he wants. I found it comical when he was opening the ball with a brand new rock. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was saying, how am I not playing state cricket, James? When you see stuff like that, but I can tell you, he will not. I feel for Jamie Smith, because every time he sees Marnus, he's going to let him know about it, for good or bad.
I would not want to be in that slip cord, and I think Usman Khawaja deserves a medal. Well played, Usman Khawaja, on a fantastic career. But you've stood in the slip between Marnus Labuschagne and Steve Smith all your days. That must be, honestly, I don't know how he's done it. No wonder he's retired. Anyway, we've had a message here from Amit who says McCullum needs to go, won't resign himself unless he's kicked out. I guess the first round exit in the T20 World Cup might just be a blessing in disguise for the ECB in the long run. I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? I mean, that starts very soon indeed. I know you hate the T20 World Cup, Lucas, but that McCullum's in charge of that team as well. And if they fall flat on their face in that tournament too, then he's not got a leg to stand on, isn't he? So it's that's going to be really interesting to see how England cope with that. Different squad, different mentality, but McCullum at the helm for that as well. I mean, that was.
I think that's one tournament, James. If England did beat Australia, I wouldn't care less.
That was one crazy thing though, was that on the back of already a big workload. I mean, I remember when. I think it was Trevor Bayliss was in charge of England. He said he had about 2 days in his bed in Australia at his home in the entire year, because it's pretty full on. You know, there's not many days off for an England coach, and you've got somebody, McCullum, who's in charge of your test team. I mean, whether it was to try and give him more money, to give him the white ball stuff and to support a bigger contract, I don't know. But the fact that he's now in charge of the white ball as well, that's just a crazy workload for anybody.
Well, it again goes back to Rob Key and the CEO. Ashes, we know away Ashes is the final point of a cycle.
Yeah.
Right? You know there's a World Cup in 2 months after that. Like, it beggars belief, like, why have, contracts been given in ways where you're now left with a situation where, you might want to make player changes, coaching changes, etc., and you can't in players' situation, and in a coach situation, you're going to do a big payout, which, for what it's worth, I think Brendan McCullum, if you give him the payout, he'll be gone. He don't care, like, he's not bothered. And at times, some of his comments make you feel like he's actually going, "Please sack me, please sack me, please sack me." It's the whole planning around everything is just been so poor, and it goes back to the detail, the detail in which you operate around this England setup. And for me, like, it's going to be weird for Thompson and Gould, because if they're asking the questions to Key, McCullum and Stokes, and especially Stokes, they could turn around and say, well, actually, you were part of that decision. So what about you? How about you get on this side as well? Right? Yeah. You were part of that. Thompson publicly said in the summer that he thought the preparation was adequate. I'm actually quite looking forward to it. Cards on the table. I've got absolutely no time for Richard Thompson and Richard Gould because of what's happened with with racism and the way they've handled it. And actually, I'm actually looking forward to seeing how they handle this, because I think there's going to be questions thrown at them as well at some point. And one of the reasons I'm interested to see what happens is because all three players, or all three people, Rob Key, media, Brendan McCullum, can be media, and Ben Stokes, big voice, very easily in that room could turn around and go, "Oh, hold on a minute, Richard," whichever one it is. You were part of that decision as well. So if I'm going to be held accountable, so are you. And that's what I'm fascinated to see.
It's quite easy, Azeem, isn't it? Because Buzzball has been, for the first 2 years of Buzzball, it's been about 4-year cycle, hasn't it, Buzzball?
Yeah.
The first 2 years, it was all sunshine and rainbows and wonderful, wonderful days. And it's quite easy to ride that surfboard, isn't it, across the waves and thinking, yeah, well, that reflects well on me as well. If I'm the CEO of the ECB, yay, come on, keep going, boys. But the last 2 years, I mean, Ben Stokes admitted it in the interviews, the results have been getting poorer. They've been stuffed in the Ashes now. And that now reflects badly on those people that were riding those waves. It reflects badly on them. And when it comes down to that review and all of this stuff about run towards the danger, let's attack the bowling and stuff, 3 centuries made by England player in the Ashes, 2 by Joe Root, who is conventional Test match cricket, applies himself, he's hungry for runs, and 1 by Jacob Bethel, who refreshingly came in and played a beautiful innings. Played a Test match innings, and neither of those 3 innings that scored England centuries involved funky shots that Harry Brook tries to play. Didn't involve anything. It was just proper Test match cricket.
I put to you, James, 2023 Ashes at home. What were our mistakes, or what did we get wrong to not win that? And that's my question to you.
Well, I mean, I can't think of any points particularly, but I think the things that England have got wrong in recent times is they've thrown away winning positions by not being hungry enough. When you play oppositions like Australia and they've got their foot on the throat, they keep their foot on the throat. They don't let you wriggle away. England let teams wriggle out of trouble by.
Well, let me remind you. 2023 Ashes, home Ashes, right? Their preparation leading into that was questioned. They went to Scotland to play golf. Right.
Yeah.
The first two test matches, they looked underprepared. The first game at Edgbaston, that stupid, silly declaration for a start. Right. Pat Cummins wins them through. The second test match, I don't know if you remember, there was a situation we were about 100 ahead, something like that. 1 wicket down, and Nathan Lyon got injured. And I remember watching it at the time. I might have even tweeted it. I remember watching. I was like, "Oh my god, lads, 40 minutes. They went to a bouncer plan. Remember it so clearly. They went to bouncers, and I'm thinking, Ollie Pope, 40 minutes. Just ride out 40 minutes here. They'll be tired, and they've got no Nathan Lyon. And what did England do? They flap, got out. Lost that test match, went 2-0 down, right? That's that. I take you to the Champions Trophy. Leading into the Champions Trophy, the preparation. We went to India, right? We lost in India. Ben Duckett going, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter as long as you go over to Pakistan and win. In a thing, that's fine. But actually, winning is a habit. We get to Pakistan. We get to the Champions Trophy. Do you know what Brendan McCullum said at the end of the Champions Trophy? You don't remember it? I'll remind you. Brendan McCullum, again, his thing was, I think we tried too hard. Yeah. Right? You see the pattern here. Pattern. So you've got preparation as a thing that happened in 2023 at the Ashes. At the end of the Champions Trophy, we tried too hard. Now we're being told that Brendan McCullum doesn't coach. All he does is works on the top 2 inch. We're going into this, right? And we think we can go in this without any preparation. So we've made the same mistakes that we've made in the past. The first 2 test matches, we're nowhere. The third test match, we do something. We're 3-0 down. It's game over. And what does Brendan McCullum said? We over-prepared. My point is, honestly, I don't think these guys have got a clue.
That was was it after 2-0, 3-0? He came out and fronted up to the press and did admit a few mistakes. But his mistakes were, we overtrained.
That was after the second test match. He said we over-prepared, after Brisbane. Now, again, the essence of what he was trying to say, I do understand, right? But my point is, nothing is being learned through this 2 years since 20. And I would go back, and I'll go into my little more detail. This bouncer out of nowhere. This wasn't the Joe Root, right? This bouncer out of nowhere has been happening for a long time. Playing rash shots out of nowhere. We lost that Oval Test match as it was happening. Harry Brook, for me, might have got us into the position to win, but he was the reason we lost that Test match. Did anyone go and say to Harry Brook, this is not acceptable? There's so many things. You know, morale of a team, big decisions matter. Going into the Ashes, you change the vice captain, right? You know, when Robke on interview says we played dumb shots, right? We played dumb shots. Well, who's one of the biggest culprit of dumb shots? At the start of this Bazball was Ben Stokes, because he was trying to tell everyone. Harry Brook. How have you rewarded Harry Brook, or how has the consequences been set for Harry Brook for playing them dumb shots? He's been given the captaincy. Right? What's happened in New Zealand? We've not even touched on it, and I don't. For what it's worth, the detail of that I'm actually not interested in. But that just shows to me, you know, the fact that the one they tried to cover it up is a failure on the part of the leadership of the ECB, thinking that, you know, that wouldn't play with Harry's head for the next 7 weeks. Clearly, it was going to come out. Clearly, it was with the press, right? But that is not happened in isolation. This has been happening, and that all is set from the top. You know, Brendan, Ben, Robke. You know, Robke did that interview and goes, from what I understand, nothing untoward has happened. Well, it depends on what your things of untoward is, because I'm very, very clear what's happened.
I know on the last Ashes tour, I'm not going to say any detail with this, so I end up in court. But there was one player who basically was going to be front page of a particular tabloid newspaper, and the ECB squashed that story and kept it under wraps. And that's, to be honest, I understand the kind of, from having worked on the media side of things and the kind of PR side of things, you need to kind of try and keep bad news out of the papers because it doesn't do your team any good. But these are regular things. These have been happening for a long time, these kind of things. And they often, by providing journalists with an exclusive or something like that, you know, we'll scratch your back, you scratch ours, you keep that story out of the papers, and we'll reward you with an exclusive with Brendan McCullum at the end of the tour or whatever. So, you know, I've got no objection with that the Noosa thing. I think getting away for a week, enjoying yourself, having a couple of beers if you want to, I've got no issue with that at all. It's kind of what I didn't like about.
I think I do. I think I do.
I don't think the trouble is with cricketers, it doesn't stay as a couple of beers. The one thing that surprised me more than anything about working in professional sport was how unprofessional a lot of cricketers are when they are not playing sport. You know, you're supposed to be fit. You're supposed to be. I assumed that, you know, elite athletes would basically be looking after their bodies and being elite athletes, unlike myself. But the amount of beer I saw drunk during cricket, you know, around the county scene was crazy.
Well,
I saw a podcast the other day. Phil Jones at Manchester United said, "What was the one thing that embarrassed you most or something when you were a footballer?" And he said he'd been told by Alex Ferguson that he could have the weekend off to attend a wedding or do something, take his wife out for an anniversary, whatever it was. And he had three pints, which to most people is nothing, you know, 3 pints. And then from a series of injuries and mishaps, he ended up having to play one half of football on that Saturday after 3 pints. And he saw that as being calamitous because he'd not prepared himself well. And this was just a normal football match. This wasn't any particular thing on television or anything particularly dramatic. But that 3 pints was in his head because he thought he'd let himself down and he hadn't prepared well. You look at how much some of the England cricketers were drinking in Noosa. That is not preparing well for the next test. That is not preparing well. So, you know, you can argue whether getting away from cricket and just kind of laying your hair down is a good thing or a bad thing. But I didn't like. But Ben Duckett was absolutely hammered. He was steaming. That's not good preparation. And I also I didn't like his attitude either. When the guy was kind of chatting to him, and they were kind of half after him and half looking after him, trying to get him home safe. And he was saying, "Well, you're nobody. Nobody knows who you are." And he was kind of really arrogant kind of attitude, and that didn't.
But James, putting that aside, everything about this setup has been unlikable. Everything about this setup has been arrogant, and everything about this setup has been dismissive of everyone else but themselves. They live in it's a cult. They live in a delusional world, a world that they have been allowed to live in through anyone that's been, in charge of it. And that's my, as we're finishing this, to cut this off, you're going to have to cut all three as a start. And I mean that as a start, because that backroom staff, there's no leaders in that, there's no one in that room that's gone, what the hell are we doing? That, for me, is the biggest worry.
This is the problem that England have got, because if Ben Stokes does step down or he's sacked as captain, who replaces him? Because you know who's going to replace him, don't you? It'll be Harry Brook, because he's the next best player. He's the next best.
Not. I mean, he should have never got the white ball captaincy. I know the kid. What you think what's happened in New Zealand is a one-off. Then you're going to see this. Unless something fundamentally changes, it's not going to be a one-off. He should have never been given that role. He should have never been given that responsibility. For what it's worth, I think Ollie Pope was the perfect person for me. And if he'd have been down the order and had his performances with the bat, I think he would have been perfectly in line to take over. But actually, for me, going into, like I said to you, from picking 11, I noticed you picked an 11 on Twitter, James, with a lot of engagement from a lot of people. I don't understand what the rush is. I honestly don't. For me, they need to get the basics right, and the management needs to change before we even get to the captain. And actually, I want the next captain's role to be a little bit less. I don't need them to be so like they are the main person. We've got 7 to 8 rounds of county championship cricket. The natural things will take place. If you find a situation where you've got players who are performing, who have experience, who potentially might be able to take it. And also, I think we need to try and get away from, like, if we pick someone as captain tomorrow, that person needs to be captain in 2 years' time, or that person needs to be captain at the next away Ashes. We need to get away from that and just go, well, hold on a minute. Actually, we need to try and pick, firstly, the best players. Within that, captaincy is a skill set. And I'll just throw a name out there. I think if he has early season performances, it's someone that we should look at is Tom Abel, because captaincy experience, very professional. He can, with a straight face, sit there and calmly and say instructions because he does it himself. So I'm not saying that is the person. What I'm saying is captaincy is not the top priority one for me. For me, the priority is Rob Key and Brendan McCullum's position. Them two positions are first, and then they can set the coaching staff. I think we need to get professionals back in there. I think we need to get away from some of these ex-players and some of these media pundits. We need to, I've seen some names we've branded about. We need to get back to understanding that coaching is a skill set, not just, I played the game, so I am the best person to coach this person. Them roles are for mentors, assistant, helping out here and there. We need someone like Andy Flower.
I found it extraordinary after the Ashes, after when Australia won the series after Sydney, that the ECB made a statement saying we're not going to change anything. We're going to wait until the World Cup. So let's say if England win the World Cup, does that mean that Ashes series gets swept under a carpet? Because if that was Australia who said that, I'd be absolutely livid with that. I'd want heads to roll. That was an absolute crap statement to make. You don't say that after 4-1 Ashes defeat.
But this is my exact point. I said this to Matt the other day. Give me, and I'll say to you, James, what do you want from an England team? Give me in as short of thing as, well, what do you want the England team to do?
I want them to beat India away, beat Australia away, and prioritise Test cricket, and any white ball success is a bonus.
Right. And I asked Matt that, and Matt talked about a lot of things, etc. And the one thing he didn't say, which for me, if I asked an Australian, would be very, very clear and simple. If you ask me, it'd be very clear. I want them to win. I want them to win. End of that first day at their Perth, Australian journalists, Australian ex-players, they were going for it. They were going for it. And now you can look at that in a negative way. I look at that as, high performance, high high environment, pushing their players, and they expect nothing but the best. We've just lost 4-1, and I'm hearing, oh yeah, there's little positives here, there's little positives there. I'm going, hold on a minute. We've lost. We need to fundamentally change our mindset. Winning is important and the most important thing.
I'll
And
tell
if you
what,
have that mindset, you go that extra mile.
what annoys me is that after every single Ashes series that we've played in Australia since the 2010-11 success, everyone since, the post-mortem has been exactly the same. About preparation, about team selections, about did we read the pitches wrong, all the rest of it. I remember Sir Geoffrey, was it 4 years ago or 8 years ago, he was standing around a podium and banging his fist on the thing saying, we didn't prepare properly. Well, we haven't prepared properly for this one. Does anybody never learn? Does anybody ever learn? Does anyone ever actually think back? We misread the pitches. All this talk about having to have 6'5", 6'6" bowlers slamming it into the halfway down. The pitches in Australia have changed. If I knew that, then surely somebody at the ECB knows that as well. It's just absolute nonsense. So what England have got to do is take county cricket a bit more seriously. You mentioned 7 or 8 rounds of championship before the first Test match. Actually, send a message to the counties. Ash has sent a message in asking about Saif Zaid at Northants is what are his chances? Well, I think for Saif Zaid, for anybody who has got a desire to play Test cricket for England, the message should be, show us what you can do. For too long, England the door has been shut. There's been a little club, cult as Azeem would say, but a little club behind that door, basically being insulated from the outside world and then criticism and all the rest of it. That door needs to be opened up. A few people chucked out of it and allow other people to come in who can have a chance, because anybody who bowls spin who has been watching Shoaib Bashir getting 16 Test caps and then not played in the Ashes at all, a project for the Ashes who never even touched the pitch. I mean, a spin bowler of any kind of there's a few out there in the county scene I think are quite good, who basically must be thinking, what do I have to do here? What do I? An opening bat who has basically watched Crawley. Even Crawley showed a few signs of trying harder in the Ashes, but ultimately
he didn't, James. But this is my point. He didn't. He did exactly what he does. This is my point. Like, he did exactly what he's done throughout his career.
What I was going to say was that ultimately, whether he tried harder or not, his results were exactly the same.
No, but it's not even the results. What I'm saying to you or putting to you, and this is my point. There was so much information of what Crawley does in his career. You could go into every series. You could go into the India series. He'll have a couple of loose shots. He'll get in 1 or 2 innings. He'll have one good score, and you know what? You'll think, oh, you know what? He's finally cracked it. He finally cracked it. He averages whichever level of cricket he plays. He averages about 35. And he's gone into this series and he's averaged 27. My point is, right? I honestly, my frustration is I'm nowhere near the team, right? I don't have personal relationships anymore with anyone, right? If I can sit here and go, hold on a minute, something is amiss here, then why are the people around it not seeing it? And that includes the media. And when it comes to individual, like I said, the county cricket it's not perfect, far from it. It really isn't. But there's a reason why a lot of people, or Australian players, a lot of people want to come to county cricket, right? It gives you something. It gives you some sort of a base. And in a way, one thing I'm glad about, some people have tried to blame it on county cricket, but they've struggled because, quite frankly, they've been so openly disrespected county cricket that, that stuff hasn't stuck. I think they've got a real problem, James. And the problem is so many layers of it, central contracts. For what it's worth, even before the multi-year stuff, I think the central contract system is outdated in today's cricket landscape.
And ultimately, what is to blame? The 100. I mean,
no, I don't. For what it's worth, I don't think it is either. Like, I'm not a 100 fan. It's not.
I was joking. It was tongue in cheek there.
I talk about spin bowling. We've produced 2 world-class spinners in modern era, Graham Swan and Adil Rashid. We've had all sorts of schedules. We've sort of all sorts of everything, and nothing has solved that. And having been through that system, having been involved in that from the age of 14, we don't know how to coach it. We don't understand how to develop it, and we don't know how to captain it. Simple as that, And if we think the solution is, that we will put a camp on here and that is what's going to do it, or camp on there and that's going to do it, it really isn't, right? In terms of this management and getting the selection wrong, they play every series, every game a game late. So their cricketing understanding is seriously worrying for me. Seriously worrying. There's a lot to do, but one thing I would say is, if you are able to accept that you've got it wrong, it can be a start to them putting it right. I actually don't think that they accept that they've got it wrong. And again, that quote of Ben, the quotes, I think they are feeling like they have to accept and show some contrition because they've been so arrogant. But I don't think they genuinely admit they've got it wrong. And yeah, I think there's going to be a culture. There has to be a cultural change. And but the challenge they're going to have is they've got to try and avoid going from one extreme to the other. So I've heard a few people going at me going, bring Justin Langer in. I wouldn't touch someone like Justin Langer. I just wouldn't, because I've seen his methods when we played against Somerset. Obviously, the stuff at Australia. These players, if they go from one extreme to the other, I think they'll really struggle. I think they need someone like an Andy Flower who has respect in the game. He has a really good mix. He's a good coach. And you know what? If he needs to rip a shreds of some of these guys, when they get in a room with Andy Flower, he can get them into reality very, very quickly.
I'll tell you what, I asked Andy Flower for an interview once in Barbados, and really nice guy. He said nothing. He said nothing but nice things, and turned it down very pleasantly. But looking in his eyes, I would not want to cross him.
Intimidating. But you know what? Actually, why don't you ask James? You should get in touch with Rob Key. Get him on the podcast. You should do it. Because the reality is they're going to have to answer some questions to people with not, who are not just protecting them. Why don't you message him?
Rob Key only ever does an interview with Sky where his mates will ask him nicely toned down questions. Shall we? There's there is so much we could talk about. We could go on for another hour, 2 hours, 4 hours probably. But we need to round this off. Look at Lucas's little eyes down there. He's so tired, bless him. We should give you the last word, Lucas, because Australia did win this series. The Ashes retained or regained or no retake. I can never get that one right. Anyway, last word with you. Despite the fact that it was a 4-1 success, there's not a lot coming behind the scenes in Australia, and the future's bleak for Australia. So we'll finish on that note, Lucas.
Well, there's some spots up for grabs, but no, as Azeem said, Rob Key, the way he's treated county cricket is just a joke. We've gone the opposite. We've brought in 4 players from the Sheffield Shield. Jake Retherald, I know that one hasn't worked out. Sorry, Jake, I know you're my mate, but you were awful in that series. Doggett, Nisa, Jai Richardson, all came from the domestic league. So it just tells you which direction the two nations are going in. Yeah, there's problems in some areas. Opening spot, number 3 and a number 5. What do we do with Travis Head? But our Shield starts just like the county championship starting soon. Our Shield starts in February because of the Big Bash. It gets broken up, which I hate. I never agree with. Then we've got Bangladesh in August, so that would be a stat padding series, and then South Africa in South Africa, which is the big one. That's the big one for me. Winning away, as Azeem said. You said, James, beating Australia and Australia beating India and India. Well, we've got all 3 coming up: South Africa, India, and England away. That would be my my preferred to at least win 2 of those series. Well, preferred all 3, but at least 2 of those series.
Did you coach Jake Weatherall to basically almost kneel at the blue going to face the ball?
I didn't coach him. I played with him. No, I don't understand where he got that stance from, because when he was at club cricket with me, he didn't have that stance. So I think he's picked that up in Tasmania. And for the record, when he looks at the ball, when the ball comes through him, he's saying, watch the ball. He says that repeatedly. Again, he didn't say that at my club cricket. He's picked that up in Tasmania. So just a little bit about Jake. Didn't work out in South Australia. He's gone to Tasmania. He's played on seam-friendly wickets. So he's made a tremendous amount of runs. He's averaged 50 since going to Tasmania. That's why he was in the team. Finished the Sheffield Shield last year as most runs on seam-friendly wickets in Tassie. So I don't know where he's got that stance from, because he never had an LBW problem. Even in Shield cricket, he doesn't get a lot of LBW decisions. So I don't know where that's came from, but he can't play the full ball. His head falls down too much for me. Something he needs to work on. But he's a good lad, Jake Weatherald, very good lad. He's gone through a lot. There was I don't know if you saw the post on Cricket Australia that he has suffered from mental health in the past. And it's been serious at times, very serious. But he's got a wonderful support network. His wife is a very lovely person, has got through him during those dark times. But he's a very lovely, lovely guy. Whatever you do, just don't make the mistake I did of putting a helmet at short leg. And then I decided to walk away, and then I realised the helmet was going a million miles past my body. He just absolutely booted it off the pitch. So don't do that from experience. But no, he's a lovely guy, Jake Weatherald. Just something I learned the hard way, but that's all right. No, good man, Jakey.
Can I just add on him, by the way? He came into a series, an Ashes series, straight first dose of international test cricket in an Ashes on pitches that were really tough. Everyone found it difficult. He got his sort of little technical fault just got, very early. I mean, having seen some of the batters, Constance was one that was touted, which I couldn't understand at all. I thought it was a slugger from the offset. I actually think he's someone that you guys should persevere with, because there's clearly, there's a lot of cricket in him, right? So there's a lot of cricket that's been played over a lot of years. There's a lot of experience in him. And actually, you know what? If he can just stand up a little bit and get that little technical thing right, which is not too difficult to get right, he's got great hands. I think you've got something that you can work with, especially knowing that I don't think there's a lot more you've got in the background. Yes, there's a few smacking it in Big Bash, but that's not that's not something you're going to be. But he was put into Test cricket in the hardest series, and there was a couple of decent scores. So I think there's been a bit of too much criticism, in my opinion, of him, because that was a tough gig.
I thought it reminded me a little bit of Adam Lyth when Lythy got his chance with England. He went into that England team for the home Ashes series, came out as an Ashes winner, but obviously lost his place after a disappointing series against a really good attack. But he should have played a lot more for England, and I think sometimes England certainly give a lot of patience to a lot of players that never actually reward them, but actually are very impatient with players that you actually look at and think, well, if you actually persevered with them, you might have got better returns.
And just on that, if he does get dropped for the Bangladesh series, I think he'll take it no cricketer wants to be dropped, but I think he'll take it well. He's part of an Ashes winning series. If you remember last year, McSweeney, he did not take that well. There was genuine concern in the SAC of the South Australia Cricket Association that he probably won't even be the same. And it's taken a long, long time for McSweeney to find runs. I don't see that with Jake Weatherald. I think he'll bounce back if he does get dropped. Like I said, he doesn't play IPL. He doesn't play Big Bash much. He will play in the last 5 rounds of the Sheffield Shield starting February. So he can still find some runs, find some form, and he get picked again. It's not the end of the world, and I think he will take that a little bit much better than what McSweeney has, unfortunately.
And
he should have never opened.
As you said, he can always tell everybody for the rest of his life he's played Test cricket for Australia and he's an Ashes winning player.
Exactly.
There are worse things to be able to do, aren't there? There are worse things to be able to do. We'll finish off by saying congratulations, Lucas. Australia, you can go to bed now, go get some sleep. Azeem, as always, thank you very much for your time on here.
Thank you, James.
And cricket badges everywhere, thank you very much. You can now all get some sleep. Honestly, I have really struggled with it. I've been commentating on it. Next time we go to Australia, I think they should just do it under floodlights during English hours, so that I can actually get some sleep, because it's quite, anybody that works shifts, I don't know how you do it, honestly. Massive respect. And we'll see you very soon on the Cricket Badger podcast. Cheers all.